Good evening, peoples. I'm Pastor Leia, and this very chatty cat is Gingersnap, who has other things to do. So welcome back to our living room for our Tuesday night Bible study series. We've been taking a closer look at some of the art that goes with our scripture for this season, using some of the resources from our worship series, Seeking from A Sanctified Art. So tonight we have a reading from the book of Exodus, chapter 17, verses 1 through 7, which I will pull up on screen. Hear now the word of the Lord. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages, as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt? To kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people, and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" This is the word of the Lord. When I come across bodies of water in nature, I am always tempted to name them things like disagreement and strife, which I believe are the literal translations of Massah and Meribah. It's symbolic, because they came through disagreements and complaining, whining to God. Well, to be fair, being thirsty is a pretty legit complaint. Quite legit. Anyway, but they got through that, Moses and the other leaders, and they got out of Egypt, they got out of slavery, they got across the sea. They can get across their fear and doubts and disagreements also. So now we come to our time of Visio Divina, which is the practice of using art as a focal point as we study and reflect over scripture. So tonight we have another lovely piece by my friend Carmel Beaugelin called Wet Stones. So friends, where do you hear God's voice in this story? I said God's voice, not Gingersnap's voice. What questions are being asked in this story? What questions would you ask? Take a deep breath in and out. Continue breathing deeply as you read the image. What do you see? What stands out to you? How is the imagery cohesive with the scripture? Now take a deeper look. What parts of the image are your eyes most drawn to? What parts of the image do you quickly brush by or overlook at first? How does the image make you feel? So now I will read the artist statement that Carmel wrote about creating this piece, Whetstones. She writes, "On a recent search to remedy dull kitchen knives, I found myself learning about whetstones. Sharpening a knife used to be called whetting, with an H, so to sharpen a blade was to whet it. Stones used for sharpening were called whetstones, or wet rock. Natural whetstones are typically formed of quartz, but today can be formed into pumice stones from all kinds of materials. This interesting play on the words wet and stone led me to ask of this Exodus narrative, in focusing on their perceived lack, how had the Hebrews' trust in God begun to dull? In Exodus 17, we find the first encounter involving the Hebrews where a perceived lack of water, a necessary resource for survival, is in question. When collective despair and the threat of abandoning the journey to God's promised land is aroused, God aids Moses in providing water from rocks along the way. This fear of scarcity dulled the once sharpened faith of the community to the extent that they longed for their former life in Egypt, where water was abundant, but sipped under the oppression of slavery. How is it that seeking freedom could cost so much? Like the Hebrews in the wilderness, our fear of scarcity may cause us to struggle in our confidence in God's provision as we seek our own promises along our life's journey. In seeking to quench our thirst, like the figures in this image, perhaps we may find the provision of God in the grace of relief and from unexpected places that sharpen our faith. So that is what Carmel has to say about this piece. So do you identify with the artist's reflection? How does hearing Carmel's statement change how you see the art? I do love a good pun, but it would certainly not have occurred to me to explore that particular one. But yeah, puns. Yeah. Anyway, friends, I hope to have some of you join me tomorrow night for our Wednesday evening prayer, also on Facebook and YouTube at 8 p.m. On Thursday mornings, we've been gathering in person in the lounge at 9 a.m. for a Bible study from Cape Boulder called Blessed Lent We Actually Have. You don't need to do any homework or reading or preparation in advance. Just show up and we'll have a nice little chat about a text for the week and some discussion questions that Kate and some of her team have put together. Should be a good conversation, so come and join me. Yes. Anyway, friends, I hope that this week's scripture stories have not made you too thirsty. And even if they have, I hope that you have a good source of clean and abundant water. So friends, good night.